Okay, so as a lot of you guys know, Quentin Tarantino, he said that he's only going to do 10 movies, which means he's only got one movie left. Now, I'm hoping that this doesn't turn out to be the case and he does quite a few more movies, to be honest. I think he's got another 10, 20 years left of directing in him. He could easily do another 4 or 5 movies in those years. He don't bring out movies all the time, obviously. He does usually take like 4 or 5 years between movies, but I'd like to see him go past 10, at least by a couple anyway. What this list is going to be is basically 10 actors who I'd like to see work with Quentin Tarantino, whether that be in his last movie or, like I say, hopefully he'll do more and maybe we can see some of these actors in there. As far as I know, he's not worked with any of these actors before in any of his movies, and yeah, basically these are just some interesting people, interesting characters, actors that I'd like to see work with Quentin Tarantino. I think they'd work well. The first person on the list is Denzel Washington. Now, I was actually watching the movie Flight, which is on Netflix, and the first 20 minutes of that movie is something else. It's quite horrible if you've got a flight coming up. I definitely won't watch it in that case. But the movie's got a great soundtrack, and it's the soundtrack along with Denzel that made me think of Tarantino. It's quite a Tarantino-esque soundtrack. So that's what made me think of Denzel a lot, as well as obviously it's Denzel Washington. You know, he's probably one of the best actors of our time, so why not collaborate him with one of the best directors of our times? For me, it's a no-brainer, really. I mean, obviously, when I'm pitching these characters to be in a movie with Quentin, I don't necessarily know what role they'd play. I don't even have a clue what sort of movie they'd be in, but all I know is I reckon that these guys working together, it'd be something pretty good. Next on the list is I actually did a video talking about this, but that's Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man himself. I think coming now that he's out of the MCU, or at least for now anyway, now that he's out of the MCU, he's recently just brought out Doctor Dolittle, which I had no interest in, and from what I've heard from reviews, it was no good. So let's get Robert Downey Jr. working with a good director. You know, I can't see how RDJ working with Quentin Tarantino. I don't think they can produce a bad movie. You know, Robert Downey Jr. has worked with Shane Black before. He's collaborated with him on a few movies. Shane Black is somewhat of a similar director to Quentin Tarantino. The movies are kind of similar in a sort of way. I think they're kind of the same sort of director, if that makes any sense. And I think Iron Man working with Quentin, like I say, I think it'd make sense. Another one on the list, and this one is kind of like a wacky actor working with somewhat of a wacky director, and that's Nicolas Cage. Now, Nick Cage, pretty much in any movie that he's in, whether that's an absolute terrible B movie or a really good movie, he's always consistent. You know, you kind of always know what you're getting with Nick Cage, especially in these later years. He's done a lot of like straight to Netflix movies or straight to DVD, whatever you want to call them. And, you know, he always brings like a level of cheesiness to it where it's like you can kind of give him a pass for being in these terrible movies. Now, obviously, for the most part, Quentin Tarantino makes great movies, so to see Nick Cage in a Tarantino movie, you know, like I say, I have no idea what sort of movie it is or what sort of role he'd play, but you know, whether he's playing somewhat of a gangster or a good guy, bad guy, whatever it is, I think Nick Cage working with Tarantino, he'd be able to bring it and we'd see him at his A game, which we all like, obviously. The next person on this list, it's a bit of a outside the box sort of thinking, and that's Eminem. Now I know what you're thinking. Eminem's not an actor, but he has been in movies before. And come on, obviously we've seen musicians trans over into acting plenty of times. Now I pick Eminem because when I think of Eminem, I obviously think of 8 Mile, which I'm pretty sure it's the only movie that he's been in other than cameos in certain movies. He popped up in that movie with Seth Rogen about North Korea and or South Korea, whichever one it is. I think it's called The Interview, and you know that's the last movie that I remember seeing him in, and that was obviously like a comedy role. But I think Eminem, like I've always wanted to, ever since watching 8 Mile, and because I'm just a fan of Eminem in general, I've always wanted to see him do more movies, which is something that he's never done. You know, 8 Mile must have been like 18 years ago, something like that now. So we're talking 20 years ago since he's done like a movie. He could have quite easily have been in plenty of movies over the years, if you ask me. I think at one point he was supposed to be in Elysium. I don't know if you guys remember that, the Matt Damon movie. And that had been working with quite an interesting director. I can't remember his name, but the guy who made District 9 and like I say, he made Elysium as well. He wanted Eminem in that originally, and I think that would have been a great movie for him to do, because obviously it's kind of like a big sci-fi movie, something interesting. But you know, obviously Eminem is quite a bit older now, but even still, I'd like to see him in movies, and I think working with Tarantino, it'd be an interesting choice. You know what I mean? I don't think many, I don't think anyone out there would particularly pair these two together. But when you think about it, you know, I don't think either of them can particularly make a bad movie, if that makes any sense. I mean, obviously Eminem hasn't been in many movies, so we can't particularly say that. But I think working with Tarantino, it'd be in good hands. Now, going from someone who's not particularly an actor to someone who's a great actor, and that's Christian Bale. Now, he's a guy that can do it all, whether you're talking about American Psycho or Batman or even The Machinist, where he loses a ton of weight. That's just a crazy thriller sort of movie. If you guys haven't seen it, you guys should definitely check it out. But Christian Bale, lately, I can't say he's particularly been in any movies that have blown my mind since Batman. So for Christian Bale to come and work with Tarantino, obviously that's more where when you go to a Tarantino movie, it doesn't necessarily matters who's in it, because Tarantino is going to bring the great story. But working with an actor like Christian Bale, I think I've said it for all these actors, but I think they give us a good story. Christian Bale, he brings his A game in everything that he does. You can't say that he ever slacks off in a movie. He gives the role his all. So whatever Tarantino's wants him to do, he's going to do it 100%. Now, someone else on the list, and this guy is probably my favourite actor. We've got Denzel on this list, who I'd consider one of the best actors in the world, and I'd say this guy is like the best movie star in the world, and that's Tom Cruise. Now, a lot of people, they either love Tom Cruise or hate him, and as you can probably tell, I'm on the side of I love Tom Cruise. I can't get enough of his movies. Pretty much any movie of Tom Cruise that I personally put on, I end up, I can quite easily watch it, and most of the time I really enjoy it. Now, Tom Cruise lately is kind of like the action star. He does the Mission Impossible movies and Jack Reachers and stuff like that. But he can also step it back. If you look at films like The Firm, and I think it's The Firm anyway, a law film, and that other law film with Jack Nicholson, where you can't handle the truth. Tom Cruise, he's an actor who can pretty much do it all, and obviously is a massive movie star. We've recently seen Tarantino work with Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio, who are obviously on the Tom Cruise level of actors and acting. But Tom Cruise, he's kind of like the more out of the box kind of choice. And obviously we've seen Tarantino work with DiCaprio a couple of times, and I think this is the first time he's worked with Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. But bringing in Tom Cruise, he don't even. I think people think of Tom Cruise and they think of the action automatically. He could play a more reserved role. And all these actors that I've mentioned on this list, they don't even have to be the main star of the Tarantino movie. They can be side actors, cameos, whatever it is. I'd just like to see these actors work with Tarantino, and I think Tom Cruise can bring it. Also, Tom Cruise has worked with a bunch of directors, from Spielberg to Stanley Kubrick. It only makes sense that he gets Quentin Tarantino on his resume of directors that he's worked with. Coming up next on the list with an old school actor. Well, I say he's an old school actor. He's been acting for ages and he's still acting now, very, very prevalent, and that's Robert De Niro. Now, Tarantino's recently worked with Al Pacino, who I was actually going to put on the list before De Niro, but then I realised he's just been in his last movie. And then I kind of thought, who else is there? And that's how I came to De Niro. But in fact, De Niro might even be the better choice than Al Pacino, because now that I think about it, De Niro, he kind of knocks everything out of the park. He's done great comedy movies with Meet the Parents and Meet the Fuckers. Even movies like Dirty Grandpa, which I hadn't even seen, and to be honest, I've heard it ain't that good, but he's up for doing comedy. So I'd say he's a little bit more versatile and probably a better actor at this stage than Pacino. But I think De Niro working with Tarantino, I think if a collaboration like this doesn't happen, De Niro is getting up there now in age. I think if it doesn't happen, we'll all wish that it did happen, so that's why I'm putting De Niro in there. Coming up next on the list is Idris Elba. Now, this guy has been in a bunch of stuff. He's probably most notably known for The Wire, and he pops up in the Thor movies and things like that. But it's his great dialogue delivery why I've chosen him to work with Quentin Tarantino, or why I would choose him to work with Quentin Tarantino. And the fact that he's been in so many different sort of movies, whether it's like horror movies or sci-fi movies, or he's pretty much done it all. So Idris Elba working with Tarantino, whatever the movie is, you just know that he's going to probably fit in there perfectly. And like I say, his line delivery and basically his line delivery, I think he'd work great delivering some of that classic Tarantino lines. Whether he's playing a gangster or whatever the role is, you just know he'd probably be good at it. And finally on this list is an actress who's also a musician, and this choice might even be a little bit more out there than the Eminem choice, but that's Lady Gaga. Now, I'm going to let that sink in for a little second, but basically what made me choose Lady Gaga is I recently watched American Horror Story, and I can't remember what season she's in. This were a couple of months ago that I seen it, but I remember her being pleasantly surprised by her acting in the series. Recently, after I watched that, A Star Is Born came out, and that ain't the movie that I particularly jump out of my seat to go see, but a Tarantino movie is. So to put Lady Gaga in a Tarantino movie, I think it'd be a great collaboration. We're starting to see how good of an actress she is, and let's stick her in there in a Tarantino movie, which most of them. For the most part, people like a Tarantino movie. You're onto a winner putting those two people together, I think. Just an interesting choice of mine anyway, but let me know what you guys think. What actors or actresses would you like to see work with Tarantino? You can consider that he might only have one movie left, or he's got plenty of movies left, and let me know what sort of role you'd like to see him in. But anyway, I'll see you guys next time.